Hello, I'm Dr. Laura Murillo, President and CEO of the Houston Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
Hi, I'm Sarah Fraser, General Manager of CBS Radio Houston.
And we are here with our candidate who's running for mayor. With us, joining us today is Chris Bell. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, absolutely. So let's start out with the first obvious question. We want to know why you want to run for mayor.
Well, I routinely tell people I think Houston is perfectly positioned to move to what I call the next level and to not only be the fourth largest city, but to actually start acting like the fourth largest city. I think many of us agree that we're a world-class city. You wouldn't have the business climate that we have here in Houston, the medical center, the arts, the culture, the restaurants, without being a world-class city. And that gives us the perfect foundation to go to the next level and be a more modern city. And I'm fascinated by what's going on, not just in the United States, but really all across the world. Cities have become the incubators for new ideas, and the cities that are fully embracing the amazing advancements in technology are the ones that are really moving forward. And I'd like to see Houston counted among them, and with the right leadership, I think we can go there.
So there are two segments of the population that are very important to this vote, the millennials and the Latino vote. How important do you think those two segments are, and what are you doing to get the vote out?
Well, since they're two of the fastest growing segments of our population, they're incredibly important. And I think anyone running for mayor, first and foremost, needs to recognize that we're the most diverse city in the United States. And I've always been a champion for that diversity when I had the privilege of serving as a member of the Houston City Council and as a member of Congress, and that's never going to change. I think we build on that diversity. One of the more disappointing things when you really look at Houston municipal politics in recent years is how the vote has diminished. Instead of more people heading to the polls, far fewer are going to the polls. And that means a very small minority of our population is electing the leadership, and that's simply wrong. And so that's one reason I do stress modernization and talk about a more modern Houston, because I think that appeals to the younger voter. They want to see Houston move in that direction. They grew up with technology and computers, so they completely get it and understand the possibilities. And I'm very hopeful that that will appeal to a younger generation.
Good. So the other thing that's always on the thoughts and minds of people here in Houston is moving forward with the pension and looking at alternatives to that. What are your thoughts regarding pension reform?
Now, it's not on everyone's mind, Laura.
Well, we hope it would be. We'd hope it would be.
But we do need to be talking about it. Obviously, we have financial challenges here in the city of Houston, but I'm not going to be the candidate running around telling everyone that the sky is falling, because other cities have faced greater challenges than we have here in Houston, and they've dealt with them. We have a lot of bright minds here in the city of Houston, and I happen to believe that we can come together and find answers and find solutions. The pensions are a problem, but I've stated repeatedly that we're not going to balance the budget on the backs of the men and women who protect us every day. My hope is that the firefighters will be willing to come to the table, that they will understand that the current system is not sustainable, and that we can work something out where we can honor the bargain that we made with the existing firefighters and perhaps change the system going forward so it will be more sustainable. But it's going to have to be dealt with, and it is a very serious issue, obviously.
Very good.
Dr. Kleinberg and the Kinder Institute do a study every year, and for the first time since it's been tracked, traffic has become the #1 concern. So our question here is, what is your plans for our infrastructure, specifically our pothole problem?
Well, I was the first to announce my candidacy in January and immediately started talking about potholes and the shameful condition of our streets. You can't be the fourth largest city. You can't talk about being a truly modern city and have streets in this condition. And a couple weeks after I announced, a friend said, well, thank you so much for making this campaign all about potholes. And I haven't. But they're symptomatic of a larger problem,
Absolutely.
I think. And I think it goes to a lot of the way we manage things and the way we address things at City Hall. Something that we have proposed is taking streets and traffic management out of the Public Works Department and making it its own department, where it would report directly to the mayor. And that way, anything having to do with mobility, whether you're talking about potholes or the synchronization of traffic lights, something else that drives me crazy, sidewalks, whatever it might be, would fall into that department. And I think as a result of directly reporting to the mayor would never fall off the radar screen. It would always be a very high priority. We would put other systems in place that would also help us track the data, track response times. I don't think if someone calls in or reports a pothole online, I think there should be a 48-hour time limit for that pothole to be filled. I think all of that should be online so you can track it. If you watch your pizza being made at Domino's now, I think you should be able to watch your pothole being filled in
Do
your
you think
neighborhood.
that's realistic?
Absolutely. In other cities
You've
that have
talked about
dealt with
you've
it.
talked about other cities that have incorporated this, New York and others, right?
Baltimore did it, and New York has it. Once you get your arms around it, and obviously the current administration has recognized that it's a crisis and started responding to that, and I applaud them. And once we get them filled, then you stay on top of it, and I do think it's realistic.
Well, across the country, we've seen law enforcement and communities butting heads on a variety of topics. What do you think will be something that you would like to put in place to make sure that Houston does not fall into one of those conditions?
Well, we've always been good here in the city of Houston, especially in recent years, about having a police department that looks like the city of Houston. And I would always make sure that that was the case and that we continue in that direction. We talked about diversity, and it's very important that that's reflected in the men and women in the Houston Police Department. But I also think it's very important that if problems start coming to the surface and people know about them, that the mayor and the leadership of the city does not try to sweep those problems under the carpet. That instead you call meetings with community leaders and you talk about what is the situation, what are you hearing, and what can be done. Because in all these situations that we read and hear about across the United States, this was not unknown. These were situations that people knew about and simply turned a blind eye toward them. You can't afford to do that. And I think if you address some of these situations on the forefront, then you can get on top of them early and keep them becoming a crisis. The other thing I'm very much in favor of are body cameras. I wish the city of Houston had moved in that direction when the chief originally presented the idea a couple of years ago. I think body cameras will be good for citizens, and I think that they will be good for the Houston police officers because we'll have an honest account of what's happening.
But wouldn't most people say that this is a lack of resources? And the question will always be, where will we get the revenue to support this?
Well, you know, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. We're going to have to address some of the financial situations or the financial situation of the city. If we can get our arms around that, pensions, revenue cap is another issue, and I'm the only candidate in this race who agrees with the Houston Chronicle and others that we should try to repeal the revenue cap. I think it's bad public policy, and it's not saving taxpayers a great deal of money, but it's causing the city of Houston numerous headaches, and so that's something else, another big ticket item that really needs to be looked at in the future. And because of some of the ideas that I'm putting on the table in terms of taking advantage of technology and making greater use of data, those things have led to greater efficiency in the other cities where they've been implemented. And I don't think it'll be any different here in the city of Houston. You hear a lot of talk about cutting waste. Well, when you start modernizing, that is what usually ends up happening. Furthermore, I'm a big fan of zero-based budgeting. And that means department heads start at zero and have to come in and justify the expenses for next year, and it would be a sea change at the city of Houston, where usually now what they say is, we spent this much last year, we did a fantastic job, so we need this much more next year, and so you just keep adding to the budget. I think given the advancements that we've seen in technology, oftentimes there are ways to scale back and save money for taxpayers.
Well, let's talk about what has been an issue that has been very controversial in our city, HERO. As you know, there are those who are for it, those who are against it. Where do you stand?
Well, I think modern cities are welcoming cities, and I've advocated for HERO when it was being considered by City Council without being asked. I went over and spoke in favor of it. Other cities that have passed similar ordinances have not seen any of the problems that the opponents of the ordinance have suggested.
And most major cities have this ordinance already. Houston's one of the few cities, isn't it? Large cities that does not.
And I think it's very important for the overall business climate that we send a very strong message across the United States that we don't discriminate here in the city of Houston, and we won't stand for discrimination. Have the ordinance and move forward. And I will be out there advocating very loudly for it. That has always been my position since my time on city council years ago and in Congress, and nothing about that is going to change. We simply cannot afford to discriminate against any group here in the city of Houston.
Okay, now it's time for a softball question. What do you think is Houston's best kept secret?
Well, it's not that big a secret anymore, but probably the arts to a certain degree. I think a lot of people are surprised when they hear that we have the phenomenal arts facilities that we have here in the city of Houston, and I think we need to do a little bit better job of promoting that, because you certainly don't want that to be a secret. And probably second is our restaurants, but that's not a very big secret anymore since everybody seems to be writing about it and seems to be a destination point for,
has become
for
one,
food
yes.
lovers. And I guess the third secret is our heat. Nobody's really glommed onto that yet, that it's really warm here. So
warm here?
if we can just keep that
Yeah,
quiet.
we'll edit that
Yes.
part out of the interview. So as we wrap up our interview, anything else that you want voters to know about your campaign and about you?
Well, you all sort of touched on them. You've touched on all the major issues, and I guess it is important the more people get involved. I think that's why it's important that we have conversations like that, and folks such as yourself are trying to get more people interested, because we can't afford to have such a small number of people going to the polls anymore. It's a very important election, because if recent trends continue, the person who's elected mayor in November or December and after the runoff will most likely serve maybe for another 6 years, and it's going to have a big impact on the overall direction of the city. I personally believe that we need to modernize, and that we're perfectly positioned to be one of the most modern cities in the country, and that's why I would be privileged to serve as the next mayor.
Very well. Well, thank you for your time, and on behalf of the Houston Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and CBS Radio, we thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you.